From the moment we're born, our brain acts like a meaning-making machine. In a sense, we're programmed to believe certain things are good and certain things are bad. These things come from our belief system that gets programmed into us over the course of a lifetime. So what is the belief system, you may ask? Well, the definition is something that we inherently believe to be true. So there are many places that these beliefs come from. Some common ones are from our government, from our peers, from parents, from media, from our partners, from religion, and from school. So sometimes these beliefs can hinder our happiness, growth, and progress in life. So it can be healthy sometimes to pull away all of this conditioning and replace these negative or non-productive beliefs with more beneficial and healthy and productive beliefs. So most of these beliefs and these programs, they're not running in the part of our brain that's the conscious part. They're running in the subconscious part, which is kind of like the background of our brain, and we're not even aware of them. So even though we're not aware of them, they will really influence our behavior and our reactions and what we believe we can do, whether or not we're realizing that this is running in the background. It really affects our state of mind. And now there are many methods to try and look at life through a more beneficial, healthier, productive perspective. So some things like talk therapy will uncover and work on the parts that you can process through your conscious mind. So if somebody tells you, of course this happens, if somebody tells you to look inwards at your childhood and all that good stuff, you could see where these beliefs started or how they happened in the first place. But again, that conscious part of the mind where we speak, where we function, where we decide what's right and wrong for us is only 5% of our mind, and it accounts for 5% of our behavior. 95% of our behavior kind of comes from the automatic part, our subconscious mind. It's deeper. So another way of saying this is that in order to progress, performance, relationships, you need to address both parts. So if we only address the conscious part of our brain, it's like just the tip of the iceberg. But if you try to solve problems and address your belief systems at the subconscious level, you can see drastic shifts with kind of that type of work. So since accessing that part of the brain is really tricky, otherwise all of us would be perfect and perform at our best, it requires some deeper work. So traditional therapy, relaxation, meditation, yoga, and hypnotherapy are all ways in which we can access those deeper inner layers. So what I'm saying is that, there are times when you're just driving your car and you're kind of zoned out, you don't know how you got there, or you're like going for a really nice walk in nature. It's those moments where you kind of lose yourself, where that conscious, discerning mind is kind of shut off. That is when you can access the deeper layers. So what we want to do once we're in that zone is we want to replace the self-inflicted programming, and that's buried deep in our psyche from years of hearing these messages, commercials, media, parents, government. And then what you try to do is to find a mechanism in which to replace the unbeneficial thoughts and limiting beliefs with something more beneficial. So this is where meditation with positive affirmations and repetition come to play. So like I said, the subconscious mind, I didn't say this, but the subconscious mind, it's not really a critical thinker. It's like really basic. It takes things at face value, and it's really susceptible, whether that could be a positive or negative, it's really susceptible to repetition and exposure and language. So for example, if you're trying to improve your performance in a sport and you hit a wall, despite all your training, it could be a benefit to examine your beliefs regarding your performance and find the unconscious roadblocks. Like, easier said than done, right? But sometimes if people just try to find where the first time they thought about this, like athletic performance, came. An example could be if someone grew up in a family where all the males were encouraged to be athletes and the females were encouraged to be nurturers and caregivers, and they were groomed that way. So who in that family do you think would have a positive subconscious belief system telling them that they will excel in a sport, that they have the right to excel in a sport, and that their peers and society would view them as positive if they excelled at the sport? Probably the males in that family. If, however, you were the female in that family, you may have internalized the message that, I don't know, women belong in the kitchen, or those other beliefs. So it's a hurdle that must be addressed. So the female that had grown up in that family can start to replace the limiting belief with something that's more empowering. So here's an example of some of those negative messages that female growing up in that family could have heard. She could have heard, women cannot excel at sports. Women do not belong in sports. Women in sports are a disappointment to their family. No woman in my family is any good at sports, so why bother? So you could see that if this woman has these subconscious kind of belief systems playing in the background, it doesn't matter how many lessons she takes or how many hours she practices, because there's something in her core that's a hurdle. So since our brain is literal, though, meaning it believes things at face value, you can flip the switch. You could then use that mechanism to say the opposite, but you have to use positive language. So for example, you couldn't say, I'm going to stop thinking that women don't belong in sports. The replacement thought has to sound a little bit more like these. So for example, for women cannot excel in sports, when you flip the switch, it sounds something like, I'm so grateful I live in a world where so many women excel in sports. See, notice I tied an emotional aspect to it as well, because our brain will really remember that. And for example, women don't belong in sports can be flipped to, I feel such a sense of belonging and empowerment with women in sports. The message where women in sports are a disappointment to their family can be switched to, women in sports are an inspiration to their family and to the future girls that come generationally after them. And I'm glad to be part of them. Another negative would be, no woman in my family has ever been any good at sports, so why bother? It is so important that I be one of the first women in my family to excel in sports, because this will be celebrated by generations to come who I can inspire. So literally you're just flipping this switch. So now you can do this once or twice. It won't really work. So like I said, the brain's about repetition. So there are many ways in which you can kind of really put this into your subconscious mind. It's important to pick one topic and address it for at least 21 days. And then the sequence of how it works for, one way of doing it is first get in a suggestible state. I don't typically love the word suggestible. It could be like a trance state, and it's nothing fancy. It's literally in a state where you're just, shutting out the day-to-day. You could be breathing, you're focusing on yourself, you're relaxed. It could be during a bath, during yoga, during a nature walk, while listening to your favorite music, anything that kind of gets you focused and grounded in your body and aware of everything. You could do an exercise where you're imagining different parts of your body and how they feel. You could do an exercise where you notice everything around you, instead of being in your brain. So that is step one. And then if you add the positive messages to yourself during that time, it will sink in a little bit better. So one way you could do this is to do the relaxation exercise, and then perhaps you could record yourself, saying the positive flipped message. Again, remember, it can't say, I will not smoke. It has to say something like, I love breathing in fresh air. My health makes me feel really excited to bounce out of bed and be healthy. Like, you just have to flip the switch on that. So step one, get into the suggestible state. Step two, record in your own voice those messages, and be as soothing and calming, and you'll believe yourself because it's your voice. It's not going to be somebody else's voice. And when you do that, don't say you. If you're recording it for yourself, say I. You'll believe yourself, right? And then you repeat. So whether it's like 15 or 20 minutes where you relax, and like 5 to 10 minutes where you're recording positive message, it doesn't matter how long it is. And then repeat that for 21 days, at least once a day. However, try to do, at least 5 times a day. Another way is just to do that one and then post those affirmations on a sticky note on your bathroom mirror or somewhere where you could see it daily. I do that with, with work sometimes. I'll have positive messages around my screen saying, listen, ask questions, because I tend to jump in at work, and I'm in sales, so I can miss out on some important information if I just fill the air. So just that message reminds me to pause. So whatever that is, what's another message you could do? You can, I don't know. Those are good. Positive messages, record yourself, create a script for yourself, read it out loud with emotion and incantation. Incantation is something where it's used in religion too when people pray. For example, in Judaism, you don't just pray, you pray with your body. So when you move your body, it convinces your mind that you actually mean it. So, try to talk to yourself in the mirror with emphasis and mean it. So those are a few techniques, but very important to flip the switch on those messages. You will notice miraculously, it's not miraculously, it's science, but you'll notice that with those obstacle removes, it could be so slight. You could be on the golf course thinking, yeah, women, I could be an inspiration to women, or whatever is meaningful to you. And all of a sudden you hit that ball like 300 yards and you're like right near the hole. Whereas you were training all week last year, hours, and you didn't get that result. So it is, it's not just the practice, it's also the belief system. So in my next video, I'll give an example of a positive, script with affirmations that anyone could listen to. So please add your comments to this video and give me some examples of things that you may struggle with. And I'll try to give examples of the positive language around those. And then I'll also do, a quick script on how, one example of how you can get into the meditative state and then use those words. A few other topics, make it very soothing sounding voice in case, you're very calm when you're suggestible. So use your softest voice, your most calmest voice. And remember to use I language. I am so grateful. I'm so happy. I'm such an inspiration. And I know some people think it's kind of funny to verbalize it as if it's already happened, but that works for your subconscious mind. Your conscious mind, not so much. But for your subconscious mind, it will respond to that and remove the roadblocks to that happening if it thinks it's already happened. So thanks again, and I wish you luck.